The massive ships appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. There were 12 of them, each one larger than any city humanity had ever built. They hung in the sky like dark moons, blocking out the sun in some places. People stopped on the streets and stared upward. Cars crashed. Phones came out by the millions. Cameras pointed at the impossible sight above. The Calthrine Empire had arrived. Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at the blue planet below. His 4 eyes scanned the data streams flowing across holographic displays. This was his 207th conquest. He had subjugated species across half the galaxy. Earth would be simple. The report said so. Analysis complete, Commander, his tactical officer reported. The young Calthrine's skin flickered with confidence. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They possess basic fusion technology and chemical propulsion. They have no unified planetary government. Current count shows 195 separate nations, many in active conflict with each other. Zekthar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. A divided species. They always fell the fastest. Sentience utility scale rating? He asked. 2.3, Commander. Intelligent enough to follow complex orders. Too fractured to organize meaningful resistance. Standard labor classification, perfect. The Empire needed workers for the mining operations on Keltra 7. Humans would do nicely. Their planet also had abundant water and rare minerals. This world would become a valuable addition to the Empire. Begin the subjugation protocol, Zekthar ordered. The attack started without warning. Rods of tungsten steel dropped from orbit, accelerated by gravity and kinetic launchers. They struck with the force of nuclear weapons but left no radiation. In minutes, Earth's largest military bases vanished in pillars of fire and smoke. The Pentagon became a crater. Russia's strategic command centers disappeared. China's missile facilities turned to glass, then came the electromagnetic pulses. Invisible waves washed over the continents and the lights went out. Phones died. Cars stopped. Planes fell from the sky. In 3 hours, humanity's technological civilization collapsed. The Calthrine dropships descended like falling stars. They landed in every major city. Tall, insect-like warriors emerged, their weapons humming with energy. They spoke through translation devices in every human language. You will obey. Resistance means death. Compliance means survival. Choose now. In Washington, the president tried to coordinate a response from an underground bunker. His screens were dead. Communication was impossible. When Calthrine soldiers breached the bunker 12 hours later, he was given the same choice as everyone else. Kneel or die. He knelt. Most of the world's leaders did the same. They had families. They had people to protect. The Calthrine weapons were beyond anything humanity possessed. Fighting seemed like suicide, but not everyone surrendered. In a facility 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Chen watched the invasion unfold on hardened military screens. This bunker had been built during the Cold War, shielded against electromagnetic attacks. Her equipment still worked. She saw everything. They're herding us like cattle, she said quietly. Around her, military officers from a dozen nations watched in horror. They had gathered here for a classified NATO summit when the ships appeared. Pure luck had saved them. We have to fight, said Colonel Dmitry Volkov, his Russian accent thick with anger. We cannot just accept this. With what? Replied Dr. Padma Singh, the civilian advisor who had been presenting on cyber warfare when the world ended. They destroyed our weapons in the first hour. They've taken our communications. We're blind and helpless. General Chen stared at the screens. The Calthrine soldiers moved with efficient precision. They had done this before. Many times before. That was clear. Then we learn, Chen said slowly. We watch, we wait, and we find their weakness. They may not have one, Volkov muttered. Everything has a weakness, Chen replied. We just have to be patient enough to find it. Above ground, the Calthrine established their control. They installed governors in every major city. Humans were registered, categorized, and assigned to labor groups. Some worked in the mines. Others built strange alien structures that rose like twisted metal trees across the landscape. The strongest were taken for genetic assessment. The smartest were put to work maintaining Calthrine equipment. Those who resisted were made examples. In Moscow, a group of soldiers tried to ambush a Calthrine patrol with improvised explosives. The bombs barely scratched the alien armor. In response, the Calthrine leveled an entire city block. 3,000 people died in seconds. The message was clear: obedience or extinction. Weeks became months. The Calthrine settled into routine. They had done this so many times that it was almost boring for them. The humans worked. The resources flowed. Another primitive world had been added to the Empire's vast holdings. Commander Zekthar filed his reports and prepared for his next assignment. Earth was secure. The humans had proven as weak as predicted. A few scattered resistance cells remained, but they were insignificant, annoying insects that could be crushed whenever convenient. But beneath the surface, something else was happening. Something the Calthrine had not anticipated, because it had never happened before in their 2,000 years of conquest. Humanity was learning. In hidden facilities around the world, resistance cells connected through old radio equipment and underground cables. They shared information. Every destroyed Calthrine drone was carefully studied. Every piece of alien technology was analyzed. Captured weapons were taken apart piece by piece. General Chen's underground command center became a hub. Scientists who had escaped the initial assault arrived through secret routes. Military strategists from every nation worked together. Old enemies became allies. The Russians shared their weapons technology. The Americans provided their tactical expertise. The Chinese contributed their manufacturing knowledge. The Indians offered their software skills. For the first time in human history, the entire species had a common enemy. National borders meant nothing anymore. There was only human and alien, slave and master. Dr. Singh spent 18 hours a day studying Calthrine computer systems. She had managed to hack into a damaged Calthrine datapad recovered from a crash site. What she found was both terrifying and hopeful. They use the same systems everywhere, she explained to Chen and Volkov. Every world they conquer, every ship they build, everything runs on standardized Calthrine technology. It makes their empire efficient. And? Chen prompted. Singh smiled grimly. And it means if we can crack one system, we can potentially crack them all. They've sacrificed security for efficiency. It's a vulnerability. Volkov leaned forward. How long until you can exploit this vulnerability? Years, maybe. Their encryption is incredibly advanced, but it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible. Above ground, humans worked in the mines and construction sites. They appeared broken, defeated, obedient. But many of them were watching, listening, remembering. They noted patrol patterns. They observed Calthrine weaknesses. They saw that the aliens were careless around humans, treating them like barely sentient animals. That was the Calthrine's first mistake. Their second mistake was assuming that humanity's history of violence made them weak. The aliens looked at human wars and saw primitive barbarism. They didn't understand that those wars had forged humanity into something dangerous. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy had been born from conflict. Humanity had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill efficiently. The Calthrine were about to get an education. As the first year of occupation ended, Zekthar received reports of minor disturbances. Nothing significant. A few attacks here and there, easily suppressed. He noted them in his logs and dismissed them. He should have paid more attention. But the Calthrine had never faced a species like humanity before. They measured strength in technology. They had never encountered an enemy whose greatest weapon was spite, the ability to endure any suffering for the promise of future revenge. Deep underground, General Chen gathered her officers. On the screens behind her, a map of Earth glowed with hundreds of red dots. Each one represented a resistance cell, a hidden weapons cache, a group of humans ready to fight. We're not ready yet, she told them. But we will be. The Calthrine think we're beaten. Let them think that. Let them grow comfortable, and when they least expect it, we'll show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The officers nodded. Above them, 3 miles of rock separated them from the occupied world. But they were not trapped down here. They were preparing, learning, waiting. The Calthrine had made a fatal error. They had given humanity time, and humanity had always been very, very good at using time to prepare for war. 3 years had passed since the Calthrine arrived. To the aliens, Earth had become just another number in their vast empire. The resources flowed steadily. The humans worked without major incidents. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Commander Zekthar had moved on to other conquests. Earth was now governed by Administrator Velkus, a mid-level bureaucrat who viewed the assignment as boring but necessary. He filed his reports on time and spent most of his days reviewing supply manifests and production quotas. Life under occupation had become routine. Humans woke before dawn, reported to their assigned work sites, and returned to their cramped housing blocks at night. They ate the tasteless protein rations the Calthrine provided. They kept their heads down. They survived. But beneath the surface of compliance, something had been growing. Something patient and angry. General Sarah Chen was 63 years old now. Her hair had gone completely gray during the occupation. She rarely slept more than 4 hours a night. The underground facility had become her entire world. She had not seen the sun in 3 years. "Show me the network map," she ordered. The holographic display flickered to life. It showed Earth's continents, covered in a web of glowing blue lines connecting thousands of points. Each point was a resistance cell. Each line represented a communication link. Over 3 years, the scattered groups had unified into a single coordinated network. Colonel Volkov, now General Volkov, stood beside her. He had age too. They all had. We have operatives in every major Calthrine facility. Many have earned trust by working diligently for 3 years. The aliens think they are loyal slaves. "And the technical teams?" Chen asked. Dr. Padma Singh stepped forward. She looked exhausted but excited. "We've made the breakthrough. The Calthrine quantum communication network can be infiltrated. I've developed a virus that will spread through their systems once we gain access to a command node." Chen felt her heart rate increase. After 3 years of work, they finally had a weapon. "Explain it simply." "I'm a soldier, not a scientist," Singh nodded. "The Calthrine use quantum entanglement for instant communication across vast distances. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment is connected to regional command ships. This makes their empire incredibly efficient. Orders travel instantly, but it also means the entire network shares the same architecture. And your virus? It's designed to exploit that shared architecture. Once uploaded to a command ship, it will spread through every connected system in the region. Ships will lose navigation. Weapons will malfunction. Their drones will shut down. The more centralized their system, the more damage we can do." Volkov crossed his arms. But we need access to a command ship first. Those vessels remain in high orbit. They never land. How do we reach one?" Chen turned to face her officers. Around the room, men and women from every nation waited. American, Russian, Chinese, Indian, Brazilian, Nigerian, Japanese. All the old divisions had disappeared. They were simply human now. "We've been working on that too," Chen said. "Captain Morrison, your report?" A tall woman with burn scars on her face stepped forward. Emily Morrison had been a Navy pilot before the invasion. Now she commanded a special team that had spent 3 years on a very specific mission. 6 months ago, we captured a Calthrine transport ship during a staged accident, Morrison explained. It crashed in the Pacific. The Calthrine assumed it was destroyed, but we recovered it intact. We've spent the last 6 months repairing it and training a crew. Singh's eyes widened. "You have a functioning Calthrine ship?" "We do. It's hidden in an underwater facility off the coast of Japan. The ship's identification codes are still valid. As far as the Calthrine network knows, Transport Vessel 774 is still in service." Chen felt a grim smile cross her face. "Then we have everything we need. A ship that can approach the command vessel without raising alarms. A virus that can cripple their systems. And 3 years' worth of anger waiting to be unleashed. There's more," Morrison continued. "We've trained 50 operators in Calthrine ship systems. We've also been secretly teaching humans in labor camps how to use captured alien weapons. When the time comes, we'll have a ground force ready." Volkov pulled up another display. This one showed supply routes and troop movements. "We've been mapping Calthrine patterns for 3 years. They've grown lazy. They follow the same patrol routes. They respond to threats the same way every time. They think they understand us, but they only see what we want them to see." It was true. The Calthrine had studied human history, but they had drawn the wrong conclusions. They saw humanity's wars as primitive and brutal. They missed the innovation born from desperation. They didn't understand that every human advance in warfare had come from being outmatched and finding creative solutions. "What about casualties?" Chen asked quietly. "When we strike, the Calthrine will retaliate hard." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. People would die. Possibly millions, Singh spoke up. "If we do nothing, we remain slaves forever. Our children will be slaves. Their children will be slaves. Every generation of humanity will live under alien rule until we forget we were ever free. And if we fight, many will die in the hope that some will live free. Chen finished. I know, I think about it every day. But I also know that we can't ask people to live on their knees forever. Over the next months, preparations accelerated. Messages spread through the resistance network using codes hidden in labor reports. A notation about shipment delays meant weapons had been cached. A report of equipment malfunction meant a Calthrine patrol schedule had changed. The aliens never noticed. They didn't read the reports carefully anymore. It was just routine paperwork from a conquered world. Across Earth, humans prepared. In the mines, workers hid tools that could be used as weapons. In the construction sites, explosives were carefully diverted and stored. In the Calthrine facilities, trusted human workers memorized security codes and mapped ventilation systems. A young man named David worked in the Tokyo garrison. For 3 years he had cleaned the Calthrine barracks and maintained their equipment. The aliens barely noticed him. He was furniture to them. Useful but not important. David had a sister. She had been killed during the first week of occupation when she protested outside the United Nations building. The Calthrine had vaporized her along with 10,000 others. David had watched from a rooftop a mile away. Every day for 3 years he had smiled at her killers. He had brought them water. He had fixed their computers. And every night he had reported everything he learned to the resistance. The Calthrine thought he was a good slave. They were wrong. David was a soldier who hadn't started fighting yet. There were thousands like David, working in power plants, serving food in Calthrine mess halls, maintaining communication arrays. All of them were watching, learning, waiting for the signal. Dr. Singh completed the final version of the virus. She named it Prometheus after the Greek god who stole fire from the gods. It seemed appropriate. Once we upload this, there's no going back, she told Chen. The Calthrine will know we have the capability to hurt them. They'll either surrender Earth or try to destroy us completely. Let them try, Chen replied. We've been building toward this for 3 years. We're ready, but were they? Chen wondered in her private moments. The Calthrine Empire spanned hundreds of worlds. Earth was just one small planet. Even if they won this battle, there would be more ships, more soldiers. The Empire could afford to lose Earth. Could humanity afford to lose everything? She pushed the doubts away. Doubts were a luxury they couldn't afford. The choice was simple: fight or accept slavery forever. And humanity had never been good at accepting defeat. The date was set. 3 years and 2 months after the invasion began, humanity would strike back. The operation was called Prometheus Rising. Captain Morrison and her crew prepared the captured transport ship. They loaded it with supplies that would justify a trip to the orbital command vessel. They also loaded themselves. 25 Special Forces operators dressed in Calthrine uniforms and carrying hidden weapons. In the Tokyo garrison, David received a message hidden in his daily work orders. 3 words that made his heart race. Tomorrow, be ready. All over Earth, similar messages spread. Resistance cells checked their weapons. Fighters said goodbye to their families, knowing many would not survive the next 48 hours. In the underground command center, General Chen gathered her staff one final time. The Calthrine made 2 critical mistakes, she told them. First, they gave us time to prepare. Second, they underestimated what humans are capable of when we're cornered. And what are we capable of? A young officer asked. Chen's expression was hard as steel. We're capable of surviving anything as long as we know there's a chance to make our enemies regret what they did to us. The Calthrine studied our history, but they didn't understand it. They thought our violence made us weak. They're about to learn it makes us very, very dangerous. The countdown began. Humanity had been patient for 3 years. Tomorrow the Calthrine would learn what happens when you corner an entire species and give them time to sharpen their teeth. The day began like any other day under occupation. The sun rose over Tokyo, casting long shadows across the alien structures that now dominated the skyline. Workers shuffled toward their assignments. Calthrine patrols moved through the streets with bored efficiency. David reported to the garrison at exactly 6 in the morning, as he had done for 3 years. He carried his cleaning supplies and his false smile. The Calthrine guards barely glanced at him as he entered. Inside, he went through his normal routine. But today, his hands shook slightly as he pushed the cleaning cart down the corridor. Hidden beneath the supplies were 3 pulse rifles and 4 plasma charges. In 20 minutes, he would either be free or dead. At the underground command center, General Chen watched the countdown clock. 15 minutes until Operation Prometheus Rising began. Her officers sat at their stations, monitoring communication channels and waiting for the signal. Transport 774 is approaching the command vessel. Morrison's voice came through the speakers. They've accepted our clearance codes. We're cleared to dock. Chen allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The captured ship had not been detected. Now came the hard part. In orbit, Captain Morrison gripped her seat as the transport ship glided toward the massive Calthrine command vessel. Through the viewport, she could see the huge ship's docking bay opening like a mechanical mouth. Behind her, 24 Special Forces operators checked their weapons one final time. "Remember," Morrison said quietly, "we need 7 minutes at the core to upload the virus. After that, we just need to survive long enough for it to spread." A soldier named Rodriguez crossed himself. 7 minutes. No problem. The transport settled into the docking clamps with a metallic clang. The airlock pressurized. Morrison stood and adjusted her stolen Calthrine uniform. It fit poorly, but in the dimmed light it might work long enough. "Let's go steal a war," she said. The airlock opened. 2 Calthrine dock workers stood outside, checking their data pads. They looked up as the humans emerged. "Supplies from Earth," Morrison said in Calthrine language, speaking through a translation device. "Requisition 774. The Calthrine workers barely paid attention. Supply runs were routine. One of them gestured toward the corridor. "Bay 7. Standard delivery." "Understood," Morrison replied. The humans moved past them, pushing cargo containers on anti-gravity sleds. Inside those containers were weapons and Dr. Singh's virus stored on a quantum drive. They walked deeper into the command ship. The corridors were mostly empty. The Calthrine ran efficient operations with minimal crew. That would help. "Turn right ahead," whispered Dr. Singh's voice through Morrison's earpiece. She was monitoring the operation from Earth, guiding them through schematics they had stolen years ago. "The core access is 200 meters down that corridor." Morrison led her team forward. They passed a few Calthrine crew members. None gave them a second glance. Just more workers doing their jobs. They reached the core access door. It required a security code. Morrison pulled out a stolen access card and swiped it. The door blinked red. "Access denied." "They changed the codes," Rodriguez muttered. Morrison tried not to panic. "Singh, we need another option." "Working on it," came the reply. "Try code sequence Alpha 7 Gamma." Morrison entered the sequence. The door remained locked. On Earth, the countdown reached 0. In Tokyo, David set down his cleaning cart in the center of the Calthrine barracks. He reached beneath the supplies and activated the timer on the plasma charges. 30 seconds. Then he pulled out a pulse rifle, turned and shot the first Calthrine guard he saw. The alien's shield flared and absorbed the shot, but the surprise was complete. The guard stared at David in confusion. Humans didn't fight back. It was impossible. David shot him twice more. The shield collapsed and the Calthrine fell. Alarms began screaming. All across the garrison, hidden resistance fighters emerged from supply closets and maintenance tunnels. They attacked with captured weapons and brutal efficiency. The Calthrine, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. The plasma charges detonated, ripping through the barracks and destroying the garrison's main power core. Lights flickered and died. Emergency systems activated. Outside in the streets of Tokyo, thousands of resistance fighters emerged from hiding. They had weapons cached in basements and sewers. They had explosives hidden in delivery trucks. They had waited 3 years for this moment. The battle for Tokyo had begun. In orbit, Morrison heard the alert starting to pulse through the command ship's systems. Attack on Earth, garrison under siege. All available forces respond. The Calthrine around them suddenly became alert. Warriors began running toward deployment bays. The ship came alive with activity. "We're out of time," Morrison said. She looked at the locked door. "Rodriguez, blow it. That'll alert everyone on the ship. They're about to know anyway." "Do it." Rodriguez placed a shaped charge on the door and everyone stepped back. The explosion was deafening in the metal corridor. The door blasted inward, revealing the glowing chamber beyond. The command core of the Calthrine vessel rose before them like a pillar of light. Data streams flowed through the air as holograms. This was the heart of their entire regional network. "Go!" Morrison shouted. 7 minutes. Dr. Singh's team rushed forward with the quantum drive. They began connecting it to the Calthrine systems. Behind them, Morrison and the soldiers formed a defensive line as Calthrine warriors came charging down the corridor. The fight was close and brutal. Pulse weapons lit up the hallway. Energy shields flared and collapsed. Morrison shot a Calthrine warrior in the face, then dove behind cover as return fire melted the wall behind her. "How long?" she shouted. 2 minutes, came the reply. "The virus is uploading." 2 minutes. Morrison checked her rifle's charge. 50%. Around her, soldiers fought desperately. Rodriguez went down with a hole burned through his chest. Another soldier, Chen's nephew Tommy, took a shot to the leg but kept firing. The Calthrine kept coming. They didn't understand what was happening, but they knew humans didn't belong here. Their confusion was the only thing keeping Morrison's team alive. The aliens had never fought humans before. They didn't know what to expect. 1 minute. Morrison shot another Calthrine. Her rifle died. She pulled out a backup pistol. Beside her, Tommy screamed as a blast took off his arm. He fell and didn't get up. They were going to die here. Morrison knew it. But that was fine. As long as the virus uploaded, their deaths would mean something. Upload complete. The technician's voice was triumphant. "Prometheus is active." "Then let's—" Morrison began. The lights went out. For a moment, there was only darkness and silence. Then emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in red. The Calthrine warriors who had been attacking suddenly seemed confused. Their weapons weren't responding. Their communication devices were silent. The virus was spreading. On Earth, General Chen watched her screens as Calthrine systems across the planet began failing. Weapons stopped working. Drones fell from the sky. Communication networks collapsed. "It's working," Volkov said, his voice filled with awe. "Sing's virus is spreading through their entire network. All units," Chen broadcast. "The shackles are off. Hit them with everything." Across Earth, resistance cells attacked. In Moscow, fighters stormed a Calthrine command post with improvised explosives. In Beijing, snipers picked off alien patrols from rooftops. In New York, workers in the mines turned their tools into weapons and overwhelmed their guards. The Calthrine had never experienced this. In their 2,000 years of empire, no conquered species had ever fought back successfully. They relied on their technology, their superior weapons, their organized force. Now their technology was killing them. Automated defense systems turned on their operators. Ships lost navigation and drifted aimlessly. Calthrine commanders shouted orders that never reached their troops because communication was dead. In Tokyo, David fought his way out of the burning garrison. Around him, the city had erupted into warfare. Humans with captured weapons faced Calthrine warriors whose armor and shields were malfunctioning. For the first time in 3 years, it was a fair fight, and humans had been preparing for this fight for their entire history. Administrator Velkus sat in his office and watched his world collapse around him. Reports flooded in from every facility. Attacks everywhere. Systems failing. This was impossible. Humans were a level 2 species. They didn't have the capability to do this. "Send the message," he ordered his communication officer. "Tell command that we've lost Earth. Request immediate reinforcements," but the message never sent. The communication arrays were down. Earth was cut off from the rest of the Empire. Velkus stared at his blank screens and finally understood. The humans had not just attacked. They had planned this. For years they had been preparing, learning, waiting. He had underestimated them. They all had. In orbit, Morrison and her surviving soldiers fought their way back to the transport ship. 8 of them had died, but the rest made it. As they fled the crippled command vessel, Morrison looked back at the massive ship. Its lights flickered randomly. Small explosions dotted its surface as systems overloaded. One small virus. That was all it took to bring down a command vessel. Because the Calthrine had built their entire empire on standardized systems. They had sacrificed security for efficiency. The news reached the Calthrine High Command 3 weeks after Earth's liberation. At first, they refused to believe it. A conquered world had overthrown its occupation force. Such a thing had never happened in the Empire's 2,000-year history. Supreme Commander Thraxel read the report 3 times. His 4 eyes narrowed in disbelief, then widened in rage. Earth. A primitive level 2 species. They had not just rebelled. They had won. How many survivors? He demanded. Approximately 4,000 Calthrine escaped Earth alive, his aide reported. Administrator Velkus is among them. He reports that the humans used our own technology against us. They deployed some kind of virus through the quantum network. Thraxel felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. If the humans could compromise the quantum network, they could potentially spread their virus to other Calthrine systems. The entire empire might be at risk. We must make an example of them, he decided. Dispatch the 3rd Subjugation Fleet, 300 warships. I want Earth reduced to ash. Make it so complete that no other conquered world will ever dare to rebel. Yes, Supreme Commander, the aide replied. The fleet will arrive at Earth in 47 days. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for a week. People danced in streets that had been patrolled by alien soldiers. Children played in the wreckage of Calthrine installations. For the first time in 3 years, humanity was free. But General Chen did not celebrate. She stood in the command center that was no longer underground, studying the long-range sensors they had captured from the Calthrine. They're coming, she told her council. Volkov, Morrison, Singh, look at this. The holographic display showed the edge of the solar system. A massive fleet of ships was approaching. 300 vessels, each one capable of destroying a city. The 3rd Subjugation Fleet. They're going to exterminate us, Volkov said quietly. That's too many ships. We can't fight that. We won because of surprise, Morrison agreed. We caught them off guard. But they know what we can do now. They won't make the same mistakes. Dr. Singh studied the sensor data. They'll arrive in 45 days. We have 6 weeks to prepare. Chen looked at her officers. They were exhausted. The battle for Earth had cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Many cities were damaged, and now they faced an enemy fleet that could wipe them out completely. Then we used those 6 weeks, Chen said. Singh, how many Calthrine ships did we capture intact? 17. Plus the transport ship Morrison's team used. 18 ships against 300. Chen smiled grimly. I faced worse odds. You have never faced worse odds, Volkov pointed out. I'm optimistic by nature. Chen pulled up a star map. The Calthrine Empire spans hundreds of systems. They've conquered countless species. But they've never faced an enemy that thinks like we do. What do you mean? Morrison asked. They fight for dominance, for control. We fight for survival. They follow rules and strategies that have worked for 2,000 years. We make up new rules every time we're outmatched. Chen pointed to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We can't meet them in open space. They'd destroy us in minutes. But what if we don't fight in open space? Singh leaned forward, understanding dawning. The asteroid belt. Millions of rocks, some the size of mountains. It would be like fighting in a maze. Exactly. The Calthrine are used to organize fleet battles in clear space. They've never had to fight in 3-dimensional terrain. But we have. Over the next 6 weeks, humanity prepared for the impossible. Using captured Calthrine technology and human innovation, they turned the asteroid belt into a war zone. Hollowed-out asteroids became military bases. Weapons were mounted on slow-moving rocks. Drones were programmed to hide in the shadows of larger asteroids. And all the captured Calthrine ships were modified with human tactics in mind. Captain Morrison trained fighter pilots on the alien vessels. The pilots were good. They had spent their lives in simulators and combat drones. Adapting to space combat came naturally. The Calthrine fly in formations, Morrison explained to her squadron. They coordinate their attacks and rely on overwhelming firepower. But formations don't work well when you can attack from any direction. In space, there is no up or down. Use that. A young pilot named Jackson raised his hand. We're outnumbered 17-1. How do we survive? We don't fight fair, Morrison replied. We hide, we ambush. We hit fast and disappear, make them afraid of every shadow. Dr. Singh had been busy too. She couldn't upload another virus to the fleet, they would be prepared for that now. But she had found something else interesting in the Calthrine databases. They use a beacon system, she explained to Chen. Fleet ships constantly communicate their positions to each other. It prevents collisions and friendly fire, but it also means we can track every ship in real time. Can we spoof the signals? Chen asked. Better. We can feed them false data. Make them think their ships are in different positions than they actually are. That would cause chaos in their formations, Volkov said. They might even fire on each other. Singh smiled. That's the idea. 45 days passed quickly. The 3rd Subjugation Fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. Fleet Commander Korthax reviewed his forces with satisfaction. 300 warships, more than enough to sterilize one small planet. All ships begin approach to Earth, he ordered. Weapons free. Destroy anything that moves. The fleet advanced in perfect formation. They passed Neptune, then Uranus. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Earth would be destroyed within hours. Then they reached the asteroid belt. The first attack came without warning. A Calthrine destroyer suddenly exploded, torn apart by kinetic missiles that appeared from behind an asteroid. Before the fleet could react, 6 more ships took hits. "Return fire," Korthax ordered. "Target those asteroids." Energy beams lashed out, vaporizing rocks. But the asteroids were just rocks. The actual weapons were hidden elsewhere. Human pilots and stolen Calthrine ships struck from unexpected angles. They dove through gaps between asteroids, fired their weapons, and vanished before the fleet could target them. They didn't fight like the Calthrine. They fought like hornets defending a hive. Quick, aggressive, and everywhere at once. "They're using the asteroids as cover," Korthax's tactical officer reported. "Our formations are being disrupted." "Break into attack groups," Korthax ordered. "Hunt them down individually." It was exactly what Chen had hoped he would say. When the fleet broke formation, Singh activated her signal spoofing program. Suddenly, Calthrine ships thought they were alone when they were actually surrounded by allies. They thought allies were enemies. They thought empty space was full of ships. Chaos erupted. A Calthrine cruiser fired on what it thought was a human ship. It was actually another Calthrine cruiser. The target returned fire, thinking it was under attack. Within minutes, sections of the fleet were fighting each other. "What is happening?" Korthax shouted. "Cease fire! All ships cease fire!" But his orders weren't reaching his fleet. Communication was breaking down as Singh's programs spread through their network. Morrison led her squadron in another attack run. They had lost 3 ships already, but they had taken down 15 Calthrine vessels. The odds were improving, remember, she told her pilots. "We don't need to destroy them all. We just need to make it cost more than Earth is worth." Jackson's fighter took a hit and exploded. Another pilot, Sarah Kim, rammed her damaged ship into a Calthrine battleship's engine core. The battleship went dark, drifting helplessly. The Battle of the Asteroid Belt raged for 18 hours. It was brutal and chaotic, nothing like the organized fleet battles the Calthrine had trained for. They were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of warfare. Human pilots used asteroids as weapons, pushing them into the paths of Calthrine ships. Drone swarms attacked sensors and communication arrays. Kinetic traps, simple rocks accelerated to high speeds, tore through shields and armor. The Calthrine had superior technology, but humanity had desperation and creativity. They fought with a viciousness born from knowing that defeat meant extinction. By the time the battle ended, the 3rd subjugation fleet had been destroyed. Not completely, about 90 ships managed to escape. But 210 Calthrine warships floated as debris in the asteroid belt. Humanity had won. Again. On Earth, people watched the sky and wept. They had survived. They had faced the full might of the Calthrine Empire and lived. But Chen knew this was just the beginning. The Empire had lost twice now. They would not make the same mistakes again. Next time they would send everything. "Prepare a message," Chen told Singh. "I want it broadcast across every frequency we can reach." "What message?" Singh asked. Chen's expression was hard. "Tell every conquered world what happened here. Tell them Earth was freed. Tell them how we did it. Let them know they can fight back too." Singh's eyes widened. "You want to start rebellions across the entire empire?" "I want to make the Calthrine fight on 1,000 fronts instead of one. If they're busy dealing with rebellions everywhere, they can't focus on destroying Earth." Volkov laughed. "You're going to start a galactic war." "No," Chen replied. "The Calthrine started the war when they conquered the first world 2,000 years ago. We're just finishing it." 3 years had passed since the Battle of the Asteroid Belt. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The Calthrine Empire, which had stood for 2,000 years, controlled only a fraction of its former territory. 47 worlds had won their freedom, and more rebellions sparked every month. The mighty empire that once spanned hundreds of systems now huddled around its core worlds, afraid to expand. Earth had become something nobody anticipated, a symbol of hope. The Free Worlds Coalition, headquartered in Geneva, represented 47 different species that had thrown off Calthrine rule. Ambassadors from dozens of worlds walked Earth's streets. Ships from 100 different cultures filled orbit. General Sarah Chen was 70 years old now. She walked with a cane and her hands shook slightly from age and exhaustion, but her mind remained sharp. As the head of the Coalition Defense Council, she coordinated military efforts across dozens of worlds. Today, she stood before the full Coalition Assembly. Representatives from every free world sat in the circular chamber. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others required methane or ammonia atmospheres and sat in environmental suits. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some were things humanity had no words for. But they were all free. That was what mattered. "We've received another request for military assistance," Chen announced. "The Vextari have begun their rebellion on the mining world of Keltros 7. They're asking for tactical support and weapons." A Beryllian delegate raised 3 of his 6 arms. "We should help them. The Vextari suffered under Kalthrine rule for 8 centuries. They deserve freedom. But at what cost?" Challenged a Thrin representative. Her scales rippled with concern. "We've been at war for 3 years. Our resources are stretched thin. Every world we help weakens our own defenses." Chen listened to the debate. It was a conversation they had weekly now. Every freed world wanted to help others gain freedom. But the coalition was young and fragile. They had won battles, not the war. The Kalthrine still have hundreds of warships, she reminded them. Their core worlds remain unconquered. If they unify under strong leadership, they could strike back hard. We need to be careful not to overextend ourselves. Dr. Padma Singh, now serving as the coalition's chief technology officer, spoke up from her seat. "We also need to consider that we're teaching warfare to species that have never known it. Some of these worlds have been conquered for so long they've forgotten how to defend themselves." It was a difficult truth. The coalition was liberating worlds, but it was also exporting the violent methods that humanity had perfected over millennia. Some species embraced it. Others struggled with the moral implications of becoming warriors. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, commanded the coalition fleet. She stood beside Chen. "We have 37 warships operational, plus support craft from allied worlds. We can help the Vextari, but it means pulling defenses from the outer ring." Chen nodded slowly. Every decision was a balance between idealism and survival. "We vote all in favor of assisting the Vextari rebellion?" The vote was close, but the motion passed. The coalition would send help. It was what they did. It was what they stood for. After the assembly adjourned, Chen returned to her office. General Volkov was waiting. He looked as old as she felt. 3 years of constant war had aged them both. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. Volkov handed her a datapad. "Intelligence from our operatives in Kalthrine space. They're consolidating their fleet, building new ships. And they've appointed a new supreme commander." "Who?" "Commander Zekthar. He was the one who conquered Earth 6 years ago." Chen felt cold anger wash over her. Zekthar, the alien who had bombed Earth's cities, who had turned humanity into slaves. Now he led what remained of the Kalthrine military. "He knows us," she said quietly. "He was there. He won't underestimate us again." "No," Volkov agreed, "which is why I think he's going to do something unexpected." "What?" Volkov pulled up another file. "A Kalthrine diplomatic vessel just entered Earth's solar system. It's broadcasting non-hostile signals. They're requesting permission to approach." Chen stared at him. "The Kalthrine want to talk?" "Apparently. The ship carries an ambassador. Zekthar sent him. After 6 years of warfare, the Kalthrine wanted to negotiate." Chen didn't trust it, but she also knew that humanity couldn't fight forever. Their victories had been won through desperation and creativity, but the Kalthrine still had vast resources. A prolonged war would eventually grind both sides down. "Let them come," she decided, "but full security. And I want Morrison's best fighters shadowing that ship every second." 3 days later, the Kalthrine ambassador arrived at Geneva. He was tall and insect-like, his 4 eyes scanning the human delegates with what might have been nervousness. His name was Velkus, the same administrator who had governed Earth during the occupation. Chen recognized him immediately. This was the alien who had filed reports about human labor quotas like they were cattle. Rage simmered in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "Ambassador Velkus," she said, "you have courage to come here." "I have necessity," Velkus replied through his translator. "The Kalthrine Empire is dying. Our economy is collapsing. Rebellions drain our resources. And we have finally understood something important." "What's that?" "That some species cannot be conquered. That some fights cost more than victory is worth." Velkus paused. We underestimated humanity. We measured you by your technology and ignored your spirit. It was a fatal mistake, and so you're here to surrender? Morrison asked skeptically. No, we're here to propose coexistence. Velkus activated a holographic display. It showed the galaxy divided into territories. These systems belong to the Calthrine core worlds. We propose borders, recognition, a ceasefire that allows both of us to survive. Chen studied the map. It was reasonable. The Calthrine would keep their core territory but give up all claim to conquered worlds. The Free Worlds Coalition would have sovereignty over liberated systems. And what guarantee do we have that you won't just rebuild your forces and attack again in 10 years? Volkov demanded. The guarantee is that we cannot afford to, Velkus said simply. Our empire is crumbling. The species that once served us willingly now question our authority. If we continue fighting, we will collapse completely. We are offering peace not from strength but from necessity. The negotiations lasted for weeks. There were arguments and setbacks. Some coalition members wanted total Calthrine surrender. Others worried about appearing weak. Chen guided the discussions with patient determination. Finally, a treaty was signed. The Geneva Accords established borders, trade agreements, and mutual recognition. The Calthrine Empire would withdraw from disputed territories. The coalition would cease military operations against core Calthrine worlds. War crimes tribunals would be established. Reparations would be paid. It wasn't perfect. Many felt the Calthrine were getting off too easily. But it was peace, and peace meant humanity could finally rest. On the day the treaty was signed, Chen stood on a balcony overlooking Geneva. The city had been rebuilt after the occupation. New buildings rose beside old ones. Human architecture mixed with designs from dozens of alien cultures. It was chaotic and beautiful. Dr. Singh joined her. We did it, she said quietly. We survived. More than survived, Chen replied. We changed the galaxy. Before Earth, no one thought the Calthrine could be stopped. Now everyone knows they can. Is that good or bad? Chen considered the question. Both. We freed a lot of species. But we also taught them violence. Some of the coalition worlds are already having conflicts with each other. We didn't just defeat the Calthrine. We destabilized the entire galactic order. What happens now? Now we learn to live with what we've created. Chen turned to face Singh. And we make sure we don't become what we fought against. It was the danger Chen worried about most. Humanity had defeated oppressors, but history showed that liberators often became the next conquerors. The coalition had power now. Ships, weapons, influence. It would be easy to start viewing other species as lesser, to justify interference or control for their own good. We need to be better than that, Chen said. We need to remember what it felt like to be powerless, to be conquered, and we need to make sure we never make another species feel that way. Singh nodded. I'll do everything I can to make sure of that. Weeks later, Chen was invited to give a lecture at the new Coalition Academy. Young cadets from dozens of species attended. They were the first generation to grow up in freedom, learning from humans and each other. Chen looked at the young faces, and faces was a loose term, as some students had beaks or sensor arrays instead and felt hope. These young people hadn't known the Calthrine Empire's cruelty. They were building something new. Today I want to talk about why we won, Chen began. The Calthrine looked at Earth and saw primitives. They saw our violence and our divisions. They thought these made us weak. She pulled up images of Earth during the occupation. Burning cities. People in chains. The broken planet they had inherited. They didn't understand that we'd spent 10,000 years at war with ourselves. That every weapon, every tactic, every strategy we used against them came from fighting each other. They thought our history of violence made us easy to control. They were wrong. A Vextari student raised a tentacle. But wasn't it wrong to be so violent? Shouldn't we aspire to peace?